The U.S. government's pornography stash. The year when the virus made the heat in bedrooms blossom, millions of time-lapsed roses blooming in an endless garden. I laid nude next to Lovely, my wife, for days without end, for nights that lasted years, for the brief moments of bliss that came in between long stretches of tragedy. I feel young again. The virus in the air was like the backwards changing of seasons, winter to fall to summer, the leaves climbing back onto the living branches of the trees, each one fluttering from the ground like opaque rain covering an atmosphere. We discovered touch and distance in those days, over and over, again and again those days. The history of our years filling seconds on a stopwatch that seemed buried in a time capsule and found long after it had been forgotten. You don't smoke. She blew little gray rings over the bed. They rose in the air. The ceiling fan on low dismissed them into the ether. We were 19 again. Our government, our U.S. government issued passports declared we were both born in 1933. I was in and out of Lovely all day and all night long. Every moment on the spectrum of history reorganized at once like a wellspring of the possible, a wonderment revisited, left behind decades ago, a geyser of all hope and all love and all life. I am not a romantic, but I don't know how else to describe this happening. So I hope you'll forgive me. I'm making up for lost time. We soaked in the radiation from the sun in our television set, shivering in orgasmic hiccups when clouds or advertisements would pass. We breathed the air that now could be seen and felt and heard. It tasted like sugar popsicles. It looked like molasses. The fountain on campus became littered with students splashing around like children. We sat on the porch swing in her backyard. Lovely talked about the early days of our marriage. We were the last of the greatest generation. It felt like she was making things up as she went along. She plucked memories out of a drawer, pulled them from a hat like a magician, created them from her submerged imagination. She clung to them as if they were always ours, forever common knowledge. Secrets. Everything is making me come. I know what you mean. I wake up coming. I exist in a constant state of orgasm. I fall asleep coming. I know what you mean. We built a fire, kindled with a bright flame of our desire and memories that flooded back to us like gasoline. Embers rose in the air and crackled with absolute heat. The molecules of oxygen in the air were exploding, one by one. I feel everything. Life is in the moments we forget that life will inevitably end. Embers flitted high above our heads. They hung there in the sticky air like stars. Holes punched in a dark tapestry hiding a blinding light. We're here. I can feel it. Just this time in the bliss of equanimity, in the happiness of what we have forgotten. I hope they never find a cure. We spent the next 30 nights in silence, watching the flames from the fire that never dimmed. Our thoughts lifted to a place that, fast asleep in marital law, we drifted together. Those few inches of separation where our bodies were two, not one, was a storybook, a fiction, existent in the present history of our rekindled marriage and nowhere else. paramedics will need the jaws of life to pry us apart. I wondered how far it would go. The virus in our lives, I never suspected that the air would become thick like the veil of 1,000 layers of silk. Lovely and I began to rely on our tactile sense, feeling around each other's body like a blind man reads a braille notebook. Is there anything better than this? The students on campus slept out on the quad. The side effect of imminent death was euphoria. An unexpected and completely nude, peaceful, total experience for all those who accepted and understood their fate and place in the world. The students listened to music and danced, smoked grass and talked. Mostly made love right there on campus, in plain sight of and willfully dismissive of any, now minimally perceived, authority. Something about the evolution of mankind. The world seems less horrible. The U.S. government issued a state of emergency, martial law, deployed the army. The infection was on every channel. The kings could never see things the way the people could. All were warned, even threatened. Life would end where it began for you, in your mother's womb. Lovely and I laid in bed over the sheets, airing our bodies in the sugar-saturated breeze. It'll all be over before we know it. The air outside the window grew low with voices from the television set, chilly in the midnight hours. Winter was here to stay. The propaganda against the virus of modern love began, and it was successful, as propaganda always is. Sheep and the ignorant began to protest love. They felt pulled into love as if thrown into a swimming pool, desperately trying to dry off while drowning. People started dying. All over podunk, highway billboards, that true love was impossible. Essentialism was socialism. Socialism was anti-American. The Antichrist was the Messiah. We were restless under the hood of our lazy love, yearning for lies. As God's breath, we had gotten selfish. We were unwilling to die for our country. We only wanted to live and breathe and fuck for our country. My wife and I thought about it. We yearned for our decisions to be our own. And then one day, everything was back to normal. Or what we were told was supposed to be normal. It took us 3 days to make a suicide pact. We carried it out. And that was that.